Okay, I am here with Brent Welder, who is a lawyer from Kansas and notably a Bernie endorsed candidate in 2018 for Congress. Very narrowly lost that election, but has remained a strident leftist and fun follow of mine who lets me know what's going on in the region. And after the kind of stunning victory for abortion rights advocates in Kansas this past week, where they fought to maintain the right to choose in the state. He reached out to me and said that there's a story here that a lot of people aren't covering. So, Brent, welcome to the podcast. What's been going on?
Well, obviously everyone I think across the country at this point knows how incredible the result was and how stunning it was in Kansas of all places. But I think what most people, would not be able to realize from outside the state is even though it won about 60-40, the incredible odds that it was up against because of the rigged process that makes it even more stunning. And there's so many things. I mean, for instance, the question itself is the most ridiculous ballot question I've ever seen in my entire life. That's written in the most biased way for the anti-choice side. It even had an even longer description of the amendment on the ballot that was like even more biased that led up to it. The legislature in Kansas is the ones that schedule these types of amendments, and they scheduled it for the primary in Kansas, which there's all these Republican primaries, and there were really no contested Democratic campaigns that were turning out voters. One thing after the next just makes it even more incredible for what happened here.
So for one, they scheduled it at a time where they thought there was going to be high Republican turnout and low Democratic turnout. So that's one. And then two, you're saying that the way the ballot question was worded was biased. Can you read us some of that so we can understand what that looked like?
Okay. So first of all, they named the ballot question, and the name of it was, or they named the amendment, and it was called the Value Them Both Amendment. Okay. So that's the very first thing you see. Which, I don't understand how you're valuing women by taking their rights away, but that's what they called it, Value Them Both Amendment. They say the Value Them Both Amendment, this is the first thing you see when you look at the question. The Value Them Both Amendment would affirm there is no Kansas constitutional right to abortion or to require the government funding of abortion, and would reserve to the people of Kansas through their elected state legislators the right to pass laws to regulate abortion, including but not limited to, in circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or when necessary to save the life of the mother. So essentially what that's saying is, if you vote for this, then we actually can, protect people from, it insinuates that they're protecting, rape victims and incest victims, when in fact, the intention was to do completely the opposite. The Republicans in the legislature in Kansas would not be likely to pass any kind of protections for rape or incest or any kind of protections whatsoever. So it starts off with a lie there. It goes on and on. And then even when you get to the amendment itself, one of the last things it says here, let me find it, is to the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, the people through their elected state representatives and state senators may pass laws regarding abortion, including but not limited to laws that account for circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or circumstances of necessity to save the life of the mother. So that's the same thing in the amendment. Another part they say is, because this is how it starts, because Kansans value both women and children, the Constitution of the state of Kansas does not require government funding of abortion and does not create or secure the right to abortion to the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States. And then it kind of goes on from there. In another place, they talk about if you vote for this, what was the words that they used here? It's so long and it just goes on and on, with all kinds of inaccurate and biased information. I remember they tried to couch it in terms even on the ballot itself as, well, if you don't vote for this amendment, then you're restricting people. And the way they tried to make that argument, well, you're restricting your legislators from being able to do this, that, or the other. No, that's not what it's about.
To restrict you. You're restricting your legislators' ability to restrict your rights.
Exactly. And we all know that the whole point of voting no was so that we weren't restricted, because women deserve to be able to make their own decisions about themselves. And so that was the first thing was those two things are a big part of it. One is the actual language of the amendment, the explanation on the ballot of the amendment. The other thing was, being in the primary, I actually have the numbers. There were 454,000 Republicans that voted that day and 281,000 Democrats. So twice as
Oh,
many Republicans
wow.
voted as Democrats. In
And
fact,
it still had a 60-40 margin
yes.
in favor of defeating it. Wow.
And even when you include the independents, 50% of the voters that turned out were Republicans. And yet the pro-choice side won 60-40.
That's incredible.
It's
So to
incredible.
what do you attribute that victory?
Well, here's the thing, and I've been in politics for a long time. I've worked on presidential campaigns, worked on congressional, Senate races around the country. And I don't think I've ever in my life seen the effect that a particular issue, such as the overturning of Roe in the Supreme Court, has had on such a large segment of voters. And what I mean by that is, hey, I'm pro-choice. There's tons of amazing pro-choice men out there, but my wife is also, a progressive activist and is pro-choice, and she's a woman. And here's the thing: women, I can tell from her, from everyone around me, from the voters, feel it in their core, in more than a man even ever could. Right? I mean, it's just so inherent. I mean, my wife, for instance, we're married in our 40s with 3 kids, right? This is not something that, she's worried about affecting her personally, but the invasion, the violation of women, I just feel like that occurred when the Supreme Court overturned Roe is just so inherent that it's energizing, it's motivating voters unlike anything I've ever seen.
So have you spoken to folks who are conservative or independent in the state about their voting choice or how they responded to the Dobbs opinion?
I have, and they feel violated. They feel just disrespected completely. And the county that I live in Kansas is overwhelmingly registered Republican, but the pro-choice side of this won overwhelmingly, and it's been known as an overwhelmingly pro-choice county for a long time. So there's a lot of Republicans, but let's not just talk about Republicans. Let's talk about people that were never registered whatsoever, but they were paying attention and they know what the overturn of Roe meant. In Kansas, as soon as Roe was overturned, voter registration spiked 1,000%, 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah. And in Missouri, I live right on the state border of Kansas and Missouri. In Missouri, which didn't even have an abortion question on the ballot, but it just energized people to come out in their primary election in general. Voter registration spiked 600%, 6 times as soon as Roe was overturned. And so I think this is, there was a 200% spike in Kansas in mail-in ballots. If you're wondering how I have all these amazing statistics, my handy assistant, who's a student at KU, Harrison Triplett, has helped me with some research with some of this.
Thank you, Harrison.
But but another thing that I wanted to talk with you about, because I know this is something we've talked about before, you and I have, is the trend that progressive issues are so overwhelmingly popular with the electorates. Yet establishment Democrats can't figure out a way to turn that into votes for their candidates, or God forbid, actual progressive policies and laws passing. We had, when I ran a couple cycles ago in Missouri, there was an anti-labor ballot amendment in Missouri, so-called right to work amendment, and it was when Trump won, this was in 2018. But anyway, it overwhelmingly went pro-labor by a 2-to-1 margin. That was in 2018. In 2020 in Florida, I think pretty famously at this point, when Trump was on the ballot, a $15 minimum wage won overwhelmingly, even though Trump also won. And why is it that establishment Democrats can't, when people are clearly progressive, people are motivated to actually do things. If they know that an actual progressive law will pass, they will come out overwhelmingly. Even Republicans will vote Democrat. Why can the candidates not get elected, and why can Democrats not turn that into progressive issues and victories?
I mean, I sit on this podcast and opine at length about what I think that is, but I wonder what's your take, Brent?
Well, I think they have no credibility. I think the Democratic Party has no credibility. I think, and I think that they are weak and fearful. I part of the establishment Democrats are not willing to run on issues that are incredibly popular. I'm going to call it right now. When you see even after seeing what happened in Kansas here, when you see the number of establishment Democrats that are probably going to hedge on choice or kind of be mealy-mouthed about that or other progressive issues, I think, people might be stunned to see that. And then the other thing is there's not credibility, because whenever the Democrats do actually say they're going to do something for someone, when they get in and they never actually do it, they never actually fight for it. I could come up with a million examples. Maybe one of the most recent ones was the promise they made to the voters in Georgia, right? About that they were going to give, what was it, $2,000 to every person. And all of a sudden we elected 2 Democrats for the first time in I don't know how long in Georgia to the Senate. We took control of the Senate, and then already they started saying, well, no, actually, we're going to have to do less of that. It's ridiculous. Now, I'm hopeful, I guess. I'm hopeful that progressives and that the electorate on this progressive issue and others will be so incredibly motivated this cycle that it will actually make up for the failings of so many establishment Democrats that are running. And I see it, and especially of all places here in Kansas, this happening against all odds. I really think there's a lot of potential for that this November, but I think we'll see.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you think this is going to pan out? Because, for over a year now, we have been in this defensive posture where the belief was, even if Biden excelled and were very effective, that the historical trends are against him in this midterm season. And given the failures of Build Back Better and the campaign and the administration, more generally speaking, we've all just been kind of gritting our teeth in preparation for what we assumed was going to be a blowout, a Republican sweep in the fall. Now, though, we're seeing trends on the kind of the general ballot that Democrats are not doing as badly as people predicted. Abortion may have a significant role to play there, but given this dynamic where Democrats have had power, Obama did have his supermajority and did run on codifying Roe, and it didn't happen. And there's a bigger public awareness, I think, of those kind of disappointments from the Democratic Party. Do you think it's going to manifest in Democrats doing better in midterm elections than has long been predicted?
Well, the short answer is I don't have any faith that the Democratic Party is going to do things right this November. Unfortunately, despite what I think is a great opportunity for them. This is the same party that when I was a delegate for Bernie back in whatever year it was that he ran against Hillary Clinton, NPR came up. Yeah. NPR came up and interviewed me the day after and said, "Well, how do you think the convention went?" And I said, "Well, considering that the chairwoman of the National Democratic Party resigned in scandal a few days before the convention because she rigged the primary against one of the candidates, and then the convention still nominated the candidate who it was rigged for, I don't think it went very well." And then we all know what happened. She was incredibly unpopular and she lost to Donald Trump. And, here we are. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith, but I will say I certainly hope that, that we can do something with what I see as an earthquake of of motivation to be involved on an important progressive issue. And of course, there's so many important progressive issues that we all fight for all the time. But I think this one in particular really gives us an opportunity. So, I think it's up to all of us to continue to pressure our Democratic candidates to make the case, to be strong, to not be mealy-mouthed, and to actually maybe potentially accomplish some things in Washington before Election Day to prove to the voters that, they will fight for progressive values. But I guess we're going to kind of have to wait and see how that goes.
So there is this increasing conversation, this growing conversation about the increasing likelihood that Joe Biden is not going to run again in 2024. There are advocates like Roots Action who have a campaign to ensure that Biden doesn't run, although I don't even know how much that's necessary at this point, given that, you've got people like Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney kind of openly saying that they don't think that he's going to run, or let's talk about it after the midterms, which is code for we're going to talk about how he's not going to run after the midterms. And I wonder if you see that as an opportunity for the left, or if you are one of the the group of leftists who are kind of disaffected and lacking in confidence that even a squad member or some other kind of leftist on the ticket, wouldn't be able to achieve much after what we've seen with Bernie, probably what you saw to some extent in your own race, et cetera.
Well, I think there's only going to be one person that decides whether Joe Biden runs again, and it's Joe Biden himself, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's been running for president since I was 7 years old. 1988 was the first time that he ran for president, and I think he wants to run again. I think, ultimately, no matter what anyone else thinks, no matter what anyone else tells him, the guy wants to be president. I think he's going to run again. Now, would I love more than anything else to see a progressive run for president this time around? Yes, I would. And I would be involved immediately and help in every way that I possibly could.
So you're not disaffected, Brent. You're not, the way things went in 2016, the way things went in 2020, the way that Bernie seemed to be kind of defeated and endorsed Biden so quickly and didn't really hold out for any concessions, and the way that we've seen Build Back Better go the way of the dinosaur, and now we're all supposed to be cheering for this much smaller bill. All of that happening, seeing how the Democratic Party establishment will mobilize against the progressive. A lot of people are saying, I don't even want to invest in the Democratic Party at all. And I have limited ability that even the best faith actor in that seat will be able to really do much of anything for us. You're not in that place.
I know there's a lot of angst out there about that. And to be completely honest, between my law firm and my family and the progressive issues I'm fighting for, that just hasn't been an area that I've spent a lot of time, worrying about or thinking about. I am so happy that Bernie has gone against the grain as much as he has over the years. And have there been things that he could do better? Absolutely. But I still, am thankful to everything that he's done for, however many decades it's been, from back when he was, running for mayor of Burlington up until this point. Who I really would love to see run, though, would be you. So if you want to run, then let me know. And
LOL. My new line, it's not true, is going to be, I'm just too young.
Well, no, I mean, I literally urge you to run. I would love to see you run. I will be the first one there to help in any way I can. So just let me know.
I'm going to start, I'm turning 37 shortly. So I'm going to start putting my age down the way that, the ladies are encouraged to do. And so my new line is going to be like, oh my God. Sorry?
Well, I think Bill Clinton was 40 when he was elected. So that'd be about how old you would be when you took office.
Yeah, no, I was old enough in 2020. But that's just the line. That's the line I'm going to take forever, because who wants that particular gig? Look, but while I have you here, I also should ask you about the flooding in Kansas and how things are going. What are the updates?
So the flooding, I believe, has mostly been in the St. Louis area, which is pretty far from where we are in Missouri, unless there's an issue that is brand new that I haven't heard about.
Okay, no worries, and we'll cut that. We don't.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. We've
worries.
Litigating some cases and trying to kind of stay on top of everything. But what's going on with the flooding, or what have you heard?
No, not much. That's what I was going to ask you. I've only seen it in passing on some GoFundMe's and stuff across my page. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's in St. Louis, which would be on the other side of Missouri. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, so before we leave, you were telling me before we started recording that you actually are litigating a bunch of cases called bad faith cases at your practice.
What's
right. That about?
That's one of the areas of law that we do, which is, we most of our cases are catastrophic injury or wrongful death litigation mostly against insurance companies and stuff when people get injured, or due to corporations. But one of the things we do is bad faith, which is when an insurance company, denies claims or screws over their insureds, which basically happens all the time. There's all these laws, depending on the state, that protect people and allow them to then sue the insurance company, not only for their damages, but for punitive damages and that kind of thing. And we've had some success with some bad faith related cases. In fact, I was even considering getting a bad faith license plate on my car. And I was trying to figure out the best way to do it. And I came up with, let me know what you think about this, BAD and then space F8TH.
I like it. I'm a little envious. Not that I drive or have a car, but I'm a little envious. Look, you're basically telling me that this is another reason I need to get my merch store up and going, because I've been very negligent on that.
Exactly.
The lawyers of America can also take advantage. Look, Brent, you're doing the Lord's work. Thank you so much for it. If I won't be running for president, but if this podcast thing ever goes south, I'm going to be trying to get barred and join your practice. So
there you go. Welder, Blunt, Welder, and Gray. I like the sound of it. Or Gray, Welder, Blunt, and Welder, as you'll probably want it to be. So.
I love it. Thank you so much. And let the audience know where they can find you on social media or anything else they should be tracking of yours.
Yep. At Brent Welder on Twitter. Is probably the best place to go. And, I just hope everyone continues doing what you're doing, hold the establishment accountable, hold not obviously the Republican establishment, also the Democratic establishment and everyone else, because there's too much at stake. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.